What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Kyle the car enthusiast here. I figured I would make another video for you guys overviewing all of the modifications I have done to the car. Since I had the other video going so long about the WRX review and the WRX buyer's guide, I would show you guys a little bit more in-depth video on what I actually have done to the car that isn't related to necessarily buying a WRX, because these are all personal choices I've made, of course. So let's get started. The first mod that's the most obvious to everybody is the Invidia Q300 exhaust right here. It's a full 3-inch exhaust, and there's a couple other things that went along with it, like the Grimspeed stock J-pipe to catback adapter, and then I also got the Grimspeed exhaust hangers, the red ones, to try and raise it up a little bit because it was initially hanging pretty low. I actually scrape on some roads around here right in the middle of the car, so I kind of high center a little bit, so I got those to see if it helped. It didn't. It's just because the car sits so low. So just keep that in mind. The car sits really low and might actually scrape at stock height in the middle. Not necessarily in the front as much because it's at stock height still. My past Impreza, I actually had lowered with Eibach Pro Kit springs. It was about 2 inches lower than stock. This has about the same ride height that did, but for some reason that one had a little bit more ground clearance in the middle. So this one sits a little bit lower than that did even. But back to the exhaust. I would say that this exhaust is a really good option for those that don't like the stock drone but want a little bit of sound. It has a nice deep tone to it, which I like. There's a lot of WRXs that just go full straight pipe, and it sounds kind of raspy. I'm not a big fan of that. This one actually has a nice crisp, clear tone to it that's really pleasing to listen to when you're driving with the windows down, yet it's not obnoxious to the neighbors or anything like that. Even my parents say it's not that loud. For a reference, I had a friend that had a straight piped exhaust, well, not a straight pipe, but a nameless Axleback Delete, and it was pretty loud, a lot more droney than this even. On the highway, when you're doing the speed limit, it doesn't drone at all. You can't even really hear it unless you put your foot into it. Driving around away from stoplights and stuff, you can hear it, and it's nice when you get to downshift next to a wall because it has a really nice tone. So I would say that the Q300 is a great option. If people wanted it to be a little bit louder, there's the Invidia R400, but from what I've read and listened to, there seems to be a lot more complaints of drone with the R400 compared to the Q300. So I would definitely recommend the Q300 if you want a gentleman's exhaust, which isn't too loud. Annoyingly enough, the stock WRX exhaust has almost no tone or sound to it. You can hear a little bit of turbo whistle, but it's all drone around 1600 RPMs to 2200 RPMs, which is where you're sitting at most of the time, and that can give you a headache after a while. I really like how the Q300 has been working out for me. It sounds really good, but it's not obnoxious, and I haven't had anybody complaining about it. Even my parents don't complain about it, so that's telling you something right there. They actually say it sounds good. Next from that is the next obvious mod, which is the Rally Armor Mudflaps, because Subaru. I had Rally Armor Mudflaps on my last Subaru as well. I had the dark gray letters on that one. This one I went with the white letters to add to the white paint, and it adds a little bit of contrast. I'm not a big fan of the red mud flaps that stick out like a sore thumb. I'm also not a big fan of red accents to begin with. That's why I didn't get the red letters. And I didn't want it to be so subtle because the mud flaps are pretty expensive, and I kind of want to show them off a little bit, so I got the white letters so that they stood out a little, but it's still subtle enough that if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't notice them. That's basically it for the rear of the car. I have license plate bulbs that are LEDs. You can't see obviously because it's the daytime. They look a lot nicer at night and makes the car look a lot more modern. The stock yellowish halogen bulbs, they're okay, but considering this car is a 2017, I didn't want it to look really dated compared to what it is, so I updated those lights. They are brighter than stock. They do make everything more visible in the back end at night. You do see a little white line on the ground because they're so bright. Doesn't bother me. I'd prefer the crisp white light than the old candle burning yellow that the stock has. I still have the stock reverse lights. I considered getting LEDs for those as well, but they're just so expensive, and you're barely in reverse, so I figured it wasn't worth it. I also didn't go with the tailless turn from Diode Dynamics. I still have the stock orange bulbs you might be able to see. I feel like those are perfectly fine for turn signals, so I just decided to leave it alone because I don't mind it actually. And I like having the safety of having my turn signal and brake separate from each other, so it's a little bit more clear to those behind me what I'm doing so that I don't have to worry about others not understanding what's going on. The wheels are stock. I will come back to that later, but the tires are not. They're actually Michelin Pilot Sport AS3 Pluses. I had to get rid of the stock summer tires because they were just way too hard in winter. And if you want to be safe in winter, you can't run summers. So I went ahead and got all seasons. They still have a decent amount of tread life on them. I probably have another year, maybe a year and a half or two that I could get out of these before I have to change them up. But I would say they're definitely a worthwhile investment if you're somewhere that there's more than just warm weather all the time. These are really grippy. I haven't noticed them coming loose at all for normal street driving. Like, unless you're just really being silly on the street, you won't really have an issue with these, but your results may vary. I have seen that these are perfectly fine for the way I drive. I'm probably going to keep these unless I go switch to track tires or something. I'll probably get a different set of wheels. And then for the front of the car, I have the Molded Innovations front lip. So this is from Subimods, if I remember correctly. And it actually is a little bit more aggressive than not having anything, but it's not so aggressive that you scrape everywhere. It's actually designed after the STI front lip spoiler. So it looks just like the OEM lip without being expensive like that one is. This is probably a third of the cost. I think it was about 120 bucks, if I remember correctly, and the stock one's like 400 or something crazy like that. It gives it a nice aggressive look at the front end. It doesn't scrape a lot. It does if you have bad roads around you. I have scraped it once or twice coming out of a gas station. But besides that, it doesn't scrape. I knew somebody that had a CS style lip, the Charge Speed replica one, and they were scraping it everywhere. They kind of ripped it off too. So if you're somebody that just wants to protect the front bumper, protect the paint, but have a nice aggressive look, I would highly recommend getting the Molded Innovations. I believe it's called the STI style lip. Sometimes for other generations it's called the V Limited lip, so I'm not 100% sure, but the STI style is the one you want. It had a little bit of a gap over here where you could see through to the ground, but over time it's kind of shrunk. You can kind of see it a little bit there. It doesn't bother me. It's gotten better as the car's been out in the sun and it's been able to heat up and cool down and have some heat cycles put into it. But I wouldn't worry about the gap anymore because it doesn't look like a gap unless you're looking for it. The other side is very similar, which is kind of what you get with a replica lip, but it's not bad enough that I would say that it's not worth it. And then the only other thing on the front of the car is the fog lights that you can kind of see. They're the Diode Dynamics Luxeon fog lights. Those are definitely a worthwhile upgrade. The car's lights from the factory are so dim you can barely see the sides of the road. So I would highly recommend, if you want to see the sides of the road better, before thinking you have to jump into headlights and getting a whole new headlight housing, just get fog lights first. They don't sell these ones anymore, but they sell a brighter version now. I don't know if they're just as good as these are or if they're even better, but this was definitely, pun intended, a night and day difference. So I'll try and get a clip of it at night so you can see it better. It might be in a different video, and if it is, I can link it above. But I would definitely recommend checking these lights out or getting some sort of fog lights because the stock lights are just so dim. I also have been considering getting the Sylvania Silver Star Ultras because I had those on my last Subaru and they made a big difference as well. It's about the best headlight you can get in the stock housing before you switch to LEDs or something like that. But I'm not somebody that's interested in switching to LEDs because from a legal standpoint, it's technically illegal to put anything other than what originally came in the headlight. So if it was a halogen headlight, it has to have halogen. If it was LED, it has to have LED. It's a silly thing that the DOT has put into law for some reason. But if you wanted to go LED, you'd have to get a whole different housing. I'm hoping Morimoto comes out with one. They just came out with one for the 2008 to 2014 model years. I'm hoping they come out with one for the 15 and up soon, because the only option we have is to go with the OEM LEDs, which I hear aren't much brighter than just getting brighter halogen bulbs. And then there's the 18 and up LED headlights with the swivel. The 18s actually had a recall for the swivel melting because it was swiveling too much and hitting the plastic. But I don't think that you can put the 18 headlights on a pre-18 unless you get like some weird harness conversion, and that's not worth it in my opinion. They also have the turn signal integrated in the headlight, and since the pre-18s have the turn signal down there, It might be kind of weird to get that to work, and I don't really want to add any confusion to if I'm turning or not, just because I would rather be safe than look super cool. I do think that the halogens look pretty cool as it is, especially on a white car. If it was a darker colored car where it was a more obvious change from being a white paint or a bright paint to chrome headlights, I could understand a little bit more. But being that this is a white car, I feel that having the chrome headlights on a white car is a little bit more clean. I know a lot of people are all about blacking everything out. I'm more about making it look cohesive than having everything black. I'm not a fan of having everything black because then there's not really contrast. Being a photographer, I also find that it's easier to edit the photos when you don't have dark wheels and white paint. It's very high dynamic range contrast between the two, so it can get a little difficult at times. So when I do get wheels, I'm considering getting a lighter color wheel. The only other thing on the exterior of the car that I have currently is the OEM rain guards or rain visors. I don't remember what they call it, but it's the OEM Subaru one. I don't know if you can see the Subaru logo here. There it is. But these, I don't remember the price of them, but they're definitely worth it. I had some rain visors on my last car too from WeatherTech. They make a huge difference because I'm one of those people that loves to have my windows down at least somewhat whenever I'm driving, just because I like the airflow. So even if it's raining, I like to have the windows cracked a little bit. Even if it gets a little bit damp feeling in the car, I'll just put the AC on or just close the windows if it gets to be too much, but I like having some sort of airflow. I would definitely recommend getting these if you want to get them. There are some other options out there that are kind of like a peel and stick double-sided tape thing. I'm not too fond of those. I just like OEM when you can. So if you can afford to get these, definitely go for them. I don't think that there was much of a price difference between these versus the aftermarket options. So I would say for best fit, just get the OEM ones if you can. For the interior modifications, there's not too much to go over, but from what you can see coming right on in is the carbon fiber lower steering wheel cover. I have that on just for looks. I actually tried it with the double-sided tape when I first put it on, and I noticed that it stopped the horn from working in all the places that I like to honk the horn from. So down here specifically, you can kind of see there, I can't even push it in. So I end up taking this out. I took the double-sided tape off. I can just pull it off when I'm driving, and then if I pull up to a car show or something, or Cars and Coffee, I'll just plop it in there, just so that it looks cool. But if you're gonna get that, I don't recommend driving with it because it kind of blocks the horn usage in certain areas. So I would just recommend putting it there for shows or something. You don't have to get it. There's other options as well. I just got it because there was the silver piece there, and it was a little bit too much for my liking, so I kind of like contrast, but that was a little too much contrast. So I put the carbon fiber piece there. And then, of course, if you go in further, you can see that I also have carbon fiber around the shifter. There we go, focus. And that I actually did and had no issues with, so I would highly recommend installing this carbon fiber shifter. This is the one that is actually an OEM shifter, and they put the carbon over it and then clear over that. It's not the OLM one that just sticks on and has the WRX embossed there. I like this one the best because it looks the most OEM. And then if you come up to the shifter itself, this is actually from a company called Billetworkz out of Pennsylvania. I think that's where he's located still. He has an RB26 Subaru hatchback you may have seen on YouTube. But I reached out to him and I got this one custom made. It's not one that you can get right off his website because I wanted to have something a little bit different and I wanted some blue to go with the Subaru blue again. So I got that, the silver splash, and a cool design. So I also bought a couple other shift knobs from him, and every time they've come in great condition, so I would highly recommend if you want a cool custom shift knob, definitely go to Billetworkz. As for other things in the interior, I have the blue LED lights down here that I'll get another clip of. That I have the dealer installed blue Footwell lighting. This came installed on the car when I got it already, but I'm really happy that it did because if I had to choose, I would pick the blue over the red. Just because I feel like there's a lot of red lighting in the car already. So I actually prefer the blue to go along with the Subaru logo. And then I have the auto dimming rear view mirror straight from Subaru. I would highly recommend getting this. I hate flicking the switch when it's not automatic. This was my first car with an automatic rear view mirror and it's amazing. So if you can find a WRX with that, that's a plus. As for the speakers, I have the Kicker tweeter upgrade up installed in there. I drove the car for probably 4 years without any different speakers than what came with it. And if you know Subarus, you know that their audio quality isn't very good. So I talked a little bit about this in my review and buyer's guide video, but the Kicker tweeters, everybody says makes the biggest difference, and it's about $100. So I did that first. I noticed a big difference in clarity up top, but down low there's still not that much clarity, and the bass is kind of maybe like muddy. I guess that's a better word for it. It's kind of not crisp. So my next step is to get the Kicker speaker upgrades for all 4 doors. I'll make a video on that when I get those. But if the speakers don't do enough for me, I'm gonna go get the sub as well. The sub is $500, so if I don't have to go that route, I won't. But I definitely need something better than what came with the factory. I had a whole setup in my last Subaru. I had Kicker front doors speakers, not OEM from Subaru, they were just normal Kicker speakers. I had a Pioneer head unit that was a basic $90 single DIN head unit with a filler space for the second DIN, and then a bazooka tube in the trunk. And that was a powered sub, so I didn't actually have to run anything to the front engine bay or the battery, because I don't like the idea of running battery cables and everything that could potentially cause parasitic draw. So I liked that it was plug and play. It actually plugged right into the back of the head unit, and I ran it under the side sill here. The problem is for the 15 and up, they changed the fuse for the stereo, so you can't do that anymore because it doesn't supply enough amps. But that's everything for the interior except the floor mats. Before I almost forgot, these floor mats are actually from 3D Maxpider. You can see their logo right there. I had WeatherTechs in my last Subaru, but the reason I didn't get them on this car is because my last Subaru had a dead pedal that wasn't covered fully, and because I live in a snowy climate, every time my feet were wet, it would get behind the floor mat and go right down the dead pedal and cause salt buildup and everything anyway, so I didn't really feel they added enough protection. These go all the way up. Sometimes they go up a little too much, sometimes the pedals will interfere, so you might want to cut that off. So I definitely recommend, if you want no pedal interference, don't get these. I just got them because it allowed me to cover the dead pedal a little bit more cohesively. So that's everything with the interior. I also have the adjustable armrest. That's cool, but I would recommend you actually keep the stock leather wrapped armrest and get the JDM extension because it's a little bit more useful and it's a little bit nicer feeling on your elbow. One more thing I forgot to mention is I actually have LEDs in all of the interior lights. The stock lights were very dim halogens again. Even the vanity mirrors I replaced with LEDs, as you can see there. These ones are a little bright, so I would not recommend getting these if you don't like bright lights in your face. But all the other lights are LEDs, and those are recommended. I believe those are also from Diode Dynamics. But that's about all that I have to say for the mods that I have done to the car. So I'm going to end the video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Kyle the Car Enthusiast. Feel free to subscribe, like, comment, whatever you want to do. I'm going to add some videos at the end here that you can click on if you want to watch more. And have a great day.